All right, Matthew, let's talk the Odyssey. Of course, like I said, the 3,000-year-old epic poem written by Homer. We all had to read it at some point in our high school careers, but Christopher Nolan has done the impossible and made it compelling. I said it. I did it. Yeah, so this came out. It's been out for just almost, we're going on a month now at the time of this recording. It came out on July 17th. To date, it has made $1.1 billion against a $250 million budget. It's Christopher Nolan's highest grossing film to date. So all that to say that it's doing really, really well. I don't think anyone expected it to not do well because, just given Christopher Nolan coming off of an Academy Award and Oppenheimer, the follow-up to that, this is obviously just being a little bit more of a straightforward action-oriented movie. So yeah, let's jump right into it. Like I said, full spoilers here, but for those of you who aren't aware or familiar with the Odyssey, just a quick recap here. We are following Odysseus, who is a soldier in the Trojan War. He's really the king of Ithaca. So he's, in charge of a battalion of men here, conscripted to go fight off in the Trojan War. And so he, inevitably hatches the Trojan horse scheme that is sort of famous, where a bunch of Greek soldiers sneak into the horse. They all, they treat the horse itself as a gift, and sneak inside the fortress, break out in the dead of night and kill everyone. Then the rest of the movie is essentially about Odysseus's journey home, right? So after the war is sort of won, everyone starts making their way home. In Odysseus's case, however, he runs into all manner of fantastical and wartime issues that prevent him from getting home to his wife and family and kingdom. Meanwhile, there's a group of suitors who have returned or have come to Ithaca who are looking for Penelope, who's the wife of Odysseus's hand in marriage. There's the throne, I guess the status of Odysseus's throne is in limbo because he's not home, but he hasn't been officially declared dead yet. So all these suitors are lined up, like waiting for confirmation that Odysseus is dead so that they can lay their claim to the throne of Ithaca. So while Odysseus is trying to make this sort of epic return back to his home, you also have this sort of brooding Game of Thrones-esque game of like trying to appease the suitors, and there's a lot of political drama and intrigue going on in the background. So of course everything sort of comes to a head here at the end. Odysseus makes his way inevitably to Ithaca after going through a bunch of different trials and tribulations, and inevitably takes on all of the suitors head on to defend his throne, defend his honor, and sort of reclaim his title as king of Ithaca. So all that being said, just getting into sort of like top level thoughts here, Matthew, how did you feel about the movie overall?
I loved it. I mean, I thought that, in hindsight, I think it was foolish to ever doubt Christopher Nolan here, but before this came out and before people actually saw it, there was some doubt whether he could actually tackle this source material. Even with Oppenheimer, and on all of his successes before, like the Odyssey was considered somewhat like untranslatable to film. Like it was, there was a reason why it hadn't been attempted at this scale for this long. And I think, really where this starts, like the most impressive part about this, it starts with the script for me and how judiciously they cut the parts from the poem that didn't need to be there and kind of just really adapted it to modern times, and I think that's the part where like the whole caveat to this is that like if you're a diehard literature fan and like an ancient Greek historian, you probably don't like this movie a whole lot.
Yeah. There's probably a lot to nitpick.
Yeah. And so, but I think what's so like kind of brilliant about the way that he adapted it, again, for our time even down to the way he emphasized like the law of Zeus and it being broken and that sort of thing. Like the Odyssey, the original poem itself was an adaptation from like verbal oral history that had been passed down. Like it was never the primary source to begin with. So this is a story that has been adapted once essentially into the written form, and now we have this modern visual form of it too that has been adapted again, still retaining the same sort of core themes. And I just thought that it was kind of a brilliant symmetry, the way that he felt comfortable adapting it to speak to our modern time while keeping the actual events of the movie the same.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I agree with you in that I loved this movie. It's, it's up there with some of my favorite Christopher Nolan movies, and I agree with you also on the writing, and specifically for me, like I think this movie is paced phenomenally, right? Like it's pushing a 3 hour runtime, and it felt like they could have like kept going, and I would have been totally fine with it. I think it's just the way, and especially when you're trying to incorporate all of these different elements and all of these different stories, small stories, while also trying to paint the larger narrative. I think just the way that the movie was told, I think we can get into how he adapted it for modern times, specifically with the law of Zeus, right? Because that is a big theme of this movie, right? So, we talk about that Trojan horse opening, right? And the deeper you get into the movie, they replay that scene back and forth, and it really is made out to be like the main sort of theme of the movie is that the Trojan horse was this breaking of societal norm, or like trust in society, or the breaking of the social contract. Um, and so yeah, like essentially what he's doing in retelling the Odyssey, and with that focus of Zeus's law, is sort of shining a light on ways in which the social contract is being broken in modern times today. So yeah, I agree with the writing, the script. I'm not a literary buff myself, so like I couldn't sit here and nitpick the things that were and weren't accurate, but I do think the ways in which that he adapted it made sense for the story that he was trying to tell.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, if we start looking beyond the screenplay, like, the next place that my mind goes is to the cast that he assembled here. I
Yeah.
mean, one of the most star-studded casts that I think you probably could put in a film in 2026. Like there's not many movie stars, like major movie stars that weren't in this in some capacity. And
It borders like on parody,
yeah, it really does. Yeah, and I mean, I think I want to shout out Matt Damon, because I mean, I think when you talk about people who can lead a cast like this, you can't go small with a star, right? Like you can't have some unknown playing it, and there's just simply not that many leading men in Hollywood who can carry this cast. Even a star like as big as Matt Damon, this would not have been a guarantee. Like this was not a slam dunk. But I think he did like a phenomenal job as the center of this movie, in a way that was like not his typical role. Like it was a little bit
Yeah.
more, I want to say like a little more soulful. And
Definitely more subdued.
yes, and I think, I mean, he nailed it. Like this probably is my favorite Matt Damon performance, just because of how seriously he took the assignment, and really led the cast, and I thought he was incredible in just about every scene.
Yeah, I think there's also, going back to that, Zeus's law and how it applies to modern times and today. I think there's also something to be said about the foil between Matt Damon as Odysseus and Robert Pattinson as Antinous, especially at the end of the movie, right? Like shit's hitting the fan. Everyone's, fighting, trying to kill Odysseus. Odysseus is, mowing these guys down one by one. And Antinous is like just barking orders from this like really like
Yes.
fearful, afraid position. And like you can really just get the sense of like he's a very cowardly person, where the entire movie we are shown that Matt Damon's take on Odysseus is just this very workman-like, does what needs to be done without complaining or saying any, like speaking up, and, isn't afraid to get his hands dirty and help his crew out, like always has his crew top of mind. I think, like I said, the literary nerds will probably be picking this kind of stuff apart, but once again, like the ways in which Nolan adapted and sort of made Odysseus, this version of Odysseus, I think it does speak to a type of manhood and a type of manliness that we're missing in modern times, in the modern era. And I think Matt Damon embodied it perfectly.
Yeah, I think, Odysseus is not like, I mean, he's a complex character, I think. Like famously in the most modern translation, or the most famous modern translation of the Odyssey, it opens with the words like, "Tell me about a complicated man." And I mean, Odysseus is definitely that. And I think that really came through in the way, both how, he was written in this adaptation, of course, but also how Matt Damon kind of played him and portrayed him and the trials and tribulations that he went through.
So we've been pretty glowing so far, and I think, for good reason, right? But is there anything that sort of jumps out to you that maybe didn't quite work or maybe missed the mark that especially compared with like some of Nolan's past works?
I mean, nothing large, honestly. Like
Yeah.
this was pretty much, I'm not going to say flawless, but it was about as flawless as you can get a movie like this. I guess, maybe tying into that complexity a little bit is that, some of the morality between, like the way, like I want to go to the end of the movie when he like mows down all the suitors, which is, if I recall correctly, in the original source text as well. Like, I think like the morality of like just killing all of them, I don't know if that fully aligns with the morality that has been that he's trying to regain. Like he's broken Zeus's law, and he's trying to repair that, essentially, or he's trying to atone for that. And I don't know. I don't know if that fully brings it full circle in the same way. I'm not saying he should have been like, hey, let's let's chill here.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a better way to resolve it, but I think if I'm going to nitpick something, I think that the incongruity between some of his actions and the morality that he preaches, and that the movie is clearly interested in conveying, there may be some nitpicks there in my mind. Yeah. But again, this is an ancient Greek story. The morality system for the ancient Greeks is very different than what ours is today. So it may be a byproduct of that, but it was one of those things where I was like, like this is, it's just somewhere that my mind went when I was watching that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it took me a while to sort of adjust to the sort of like more quote unquote squeaky clean version of Odysseus, because he definitely is, I would say, more complicated and more complex in the original text and different adaptations that I've seen and heard. So, but yeah, I mean, to go back to what you were saying, like, yeah, like I wouldn't say it's flawless, but it really is like without any sort of major imperfections. I think this is a good point for me to shout out and talk about and gush about really the practical effects, and really just the level of like, not really since Mad Max Fury Road have I seen practical effects done this well. I mean, just that whole fall of Troy sequence where you're just seeing these buildings fall down and everything, like just the way that they captured it, and just knowing that all of that stuff is practical is just really impressive. Obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the Cyclops and how they used the giant puppet for him, and just made him look at like this super imposing and yet like grotesque monster. But yeah, the practical effects in this were just phenomenal. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I think, I mean, some of those scenes, like the Cyclops scene you mentioned, it makes me wonder what Christopher Nolan could do with like a horror movie, because
Oh yeah.
some of those scenes were scarier than than most horror movies. Like they were just terrifying with the way that they, and I think that does have something to do with the effects. You know, the fact that it's not CG. Like, you
Hmm.
know, it gives
Yeah,
it.
that pig sequence was gruesome, man.
Yeah, and the scene with I'm gonna blank on the name, but when the huge like tentacles come out of the side of the mountain and are just ripping the people off the
Yes.
boat, like, man, that was terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, I would say, I was, searching for a superlative to give this because it's definitely not my favorite Nolan movie, nor is it like I would say is his best movie, but I would say it's probably the most well-made Nolan movie, or like the most well-produced Nolan movie that I've watched. Just in terms of not only the practical effects, but the set design, the authenticity to ancient Greece. We can touch on the music and how for the score they recreated lutes and different instruments that were common in ancient Greece. So a lot of attention to detail, and I think the production for this was just off the charts. This is very much, I think, a movie when it comes Oscar time that not just the cast you're gonna see score nominations, but this is gonna be something for stage design and makeup and costuming, and like it's gonna be like I think it's gonna challenge Lord of the Rings Return to the King for like most nominated. Hey guys, present day Neil here. I had a feeling as I was saying this that I was wrong to say that Lord of the Rings Return of the King was the most nominated movie in Oscar history. And turns out that I was wrong, but only because that Sinners recently dethroned it last year with 16 nominations. Just thought I'd give you guys that extra context. All right, back to the show.
Yeah, I think for sure, like the set design. I mean, the film, like the cinematography. I don't know if you saw. I think you saw this in IMAX as well, right?
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was spectacular in IMAX, and I'm sure it's still great in
It is, yeah.
in regular. I want to see it again. I just haven't been able to. But yeah, I mean, I think, in searching for a word to describe this, I think it's certainly his most like comprehensive film to date.
Yeah.
Like front to back, this is a full whole that he's created here. Like he created a universe, and then shot this movie in it essentially. So yeah, I would also agree that it's probably not my favorite. I may rank it. I don't know. It's so tough. I mean, I haven't seen some of his older ones in a while. I would say that I think my favorite is probably Memento, which is one of his early
Mm-hmm.
ones.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but this could be like a second or possibly a third.
Yeah, I'm thinking like top 4 because I'm a sucker. Like I think Inception is probably my favorite. I'm a sucker for that movie. And Interstellar now just hits harder now that I'm a dad. So those are like, and of course, like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Dark Knight. So I would say like that's a top 3. If I'm not ranking them, and then I would say this slots in at like a 4. Caveat that I haven't seen Oppenheimer. I haven't seen in some of his older stuff, and of course haven't seen some of the older stuff in a while. But yeah, like I think that lines up with how I'm feeling and sort of what the general consensus is, where it's really really well done movie. It's just, I mean, like it's one of those that I think it really shows like that art, like cinema and film still has some juice in terms of like an art form. It's not just YouTubers and it's not just streaming. Like there's still value in putting something in on film. And I think, I'm glad we have a Christopher Nolan in our generation to keep proving that time and time again.
I agree. And this was certainly one where like I don't see many movies in theaters these days, but this was one where I like absolutely had to see it in theaters. Like I had to make
Yeah.
time to do that. Although I will say on the flip side of that, like when in terms of like saying, in terms of ranking these movies or determining like their overall lasting power, the reality is that most of them, like the movie is going to be seen more times at home than
Mhm.
it is in a theater. Once its theatrical run ends, most people are going to be watching it at that point at home. So I'm hesitant to rank this until I see how it feels, like what the vibe is when you watch this at home. It's obviously a different feel. It's not as grand, but I think
Yeah.
there's something to be said for how a film like how it plays, at home. So I'll hold off on my formal ranking until I see it like in my own house.
I'll sneak in one more jab because you mentioned the at home viewing experience. I can only hope that the at home viewing experience they get the audio mix right because, like many other moviegoers, avid moviegoers that I follow have pointed out, the audio mix on this just wasn't great. It was really loud in parts, and then there were parts where you couldn't hear the dialogue because of all the loud background stuff that was happening. So that was like, in terms of nitpicks. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Nolan as a creator, right? Like I think he's sort of been on this interesting trajectory where, he was kind of carving out this niche for doing just really bold narrative stuff that kind of had weird elements to it. And these last few movies that he's done have been more direct adaptation. So what do you think, as someone who's followed Nolan and watched his movies over the years, like what do you want to see him tackle next?
At this point, I mean, following up Oppenheimer and the Odyssey, he's got a blank check to do whatever
Yeah.
he wants to do at this point. Like if there's not going to be another point in his career where he has this kind of goodwill. I mean, it's sort of surprising that it was only now that he got a movie that with a budget this large. Um, but so he could do whatever he wants. I think I sort of think he will go. He won't go this big again because he's talked a little bit about how grueling it was and how
Yeah.
difficult filming it was. So I kind of think he might play against the expectation there. For me personally, when you look back at the movies that he's done, I don't, he's not, he's done war movies. He's done, modern war movies, ancient war movies. He's done the biopic. He's done a bunch of sci-fi. What I think I would really like to see him is just like move into a genre that he hasn't done before. Like maybe do
Yeah.
like a modern Western or something like that.
Ooh.
Like I think he could crush a Western. But that's just me. I think he may go back small again. And
Yeah.
do something a little bit more off the wall, which I would be fine with as well.
Yeah, the I mean, yeah, he's been pretty genre agnostic throughout his career
Yes.
for sure. And he's done, I mean, I think I like the horror shout out. I think after the Cersei scene in this, that like I think that's kind of I would like to see him try a like a Cronenberg style horror
Yeah.
movie, and really just sort of ratchet it up in terms of it wouldn't be appealing to me. Like that's like I'm pitching this movie and like I actively would not go see this in theaters, but I think just given what some of the elements that they did introduce in the Odyssey, I think that'd be really cool. I mean, if I am being selfish, I would say I want him to just try and tackle an original universe, right? Like get really crazy and just sort of, like what's a really cool unique world, like what's his version of Avatar, and just, give him a blank check to make that. I would like to see that. But yeah, given how intense filming and stuff was for the Odyssey, I can imagine not wanting to jump right into something that big and grand again. But I would like to see him, tackle with that level of grandiose, something like cool and original, whether it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I would like to see him do that too. And I think he will eventually. It's just a matter of when. But yeah, I mean, for sure, all eyes will be on him to see what he does next.
So the Odyssey's big now, right? Like it's out, like it's kind of become like it's got this like pop culture cachet. Um, does this mean in your eyes that like Greek mythology is sort of like ripe for the picking in terms of movie adaptations and other pop culture things?
I think we'll probably see a little uptick in like Greek adaptations or ancient, at least maybe not even just Greek, but just like sort of ancient text adaptations or maybe just mythology in general.
Mm.
Because I think this shows that, there's an appetite for it, even though this was obviously one that most of the others will not have, the IMAX, fleet behind them and the production crew and the budget. But I think it shows that some people will want to get on this and make some summer blockbusters like this. So I think if we look forward in a couple years, we'll probably see a slightly more ancient mythology adaptation movies in the summer season than we have recently. Would be my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, this is my opportunity. Also, like I previously talked about it when we talked about Hades last year, but Epic the Musical, this came out sometime last year, I believe, and it's essentially just a musical version of the Odyssey, and that already, even a year before the film came out, had sort of amassed this cult following. There's an animated show in the works, so yeah, Odysseus fans will definitely have, I think, no shortage of new content, I think, in the coming months and years. Um, another thing I do want to shout out too is Ubisoft, I believe, also called out that Assassin's Creed Odyssey had some sort of player spike as a result of
Yes.
interest because of the Odyssey. So yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see downstream effects of all this, similarly to when you see pirates, and it's all cyclical, and so yeah, ancient Greece is today's pirate movie, as it was in the mid 2000s. But yeah, great movie that is the Odyssey. Go see it if you haven't already. I wish I could go see it in IMAX 70 millimeter, but I just don't think I'm willing to go into the movie theater at 3 a.m. But God bless you if you are.